Okay, hello. I'm here to talk to you about the problem of women in tech, in particular, why there aren't that many of us, and hopefully give you some ideas about how we might practically go about changing that problem. Um, so I'm going to start off looking at why it's a problem in the first place. So in the UK, I'm very much concentrating on the UK end. We have an issue with women in tech in that there just aren't many of us. If we look at the national picture on this carefully created graph, you'll see that the population is about half women. That's not unusual for human beings. When you get into school, it's about half women still. So at the beginning, when everyone's doing computing, obviously everyone's doing computing. So half of them are boys and half of them are girls. As soon as people start to make choices, so this is the GCSE column, what happens is the girls drop off. So GCSEs, it's 22%. Then for A levels in the UK, we're looking at 14, 13%. Universities consistently hover around 15%. And in the workforce, we're about 17%. What I'd like you to get from this is that there just aren't that many of us. Those numbers are pretty stable, unfortunately. They go up and down a couple of percent each year, but they don't change really dramatically from year to year. And there aren't many people really bucking the trend. And this is a problem. This is a problem for the women who are in tech, because we're in a minority and that's not much fun. And it's a problem for tech as a whole, because computing is kind of key to the future of, well, just about everything, really. There is, of course, something of an elephant in the room, which I'm going to address straight up front. Is it not just the case that men and women are different, right? Is it not just the case that when it comes to computing ability, men are really good, women are really bad? Maybe it comes to interest in computing. Maybe men are really interested in computing, women really aren't interested in computing. I mean, obviously, there are some gender differences, right? So maybe the case is just that women aren't interested. Personally, I think that's more like the product of a male cow's back end than the elephant in the room. And if you look at the literature on gender differences, you'll find actually they're just not that big. It's not the case that men are particularly good at systematizing and women are particularly bad at systematizing. If you read the literature, and there's a lot of it, if you read the literature, you'll find that gender is actually a lot more complicated than that. And we are not simply pink brains and blue brains. If you look into gender differences in a lot more detail, you'll find they're more like this. So you've got two bell curves, and there might be a slight difference in them. There might be a couple of percentage either way, but the vast majority of it is overlap. And that is the case when people look at any kind of gender difference in depth. It's not the case that guys are good at computing and girls are bad at computing. There is nothing about being born with a penis that makes you write better code. So what we want to know now is the other question that we need to address is that maybe there's a gender difference, gender imbalance, and maybe it's not due to gender differences, but maybe that's fine. Maybe we were right with that. Maybe it doesn't have any impact upon computing as a whole. I think there are a couple of really important points to make here when you're considering the impact of gender differences and gender imbalances like this. First is the impact on the women, right? So women are missing out on good jobs, they're missing out on opportunities, and that's not great. The other thing is there is a skills shortage in tech, and actually we need more people with these skills. So only drawing from half of the population is a problem there. And finally, there's the fact that diverse teams do perform better. And this has been shown again and again. And it's not because women have, I don't know, magical business ovaries that they bring to the table. It's more that when you've got a lot of different opinions feeding into the decision-making process, you end up with better results. And And that's true of diversity in every sense, in diversity in age, diversity in race, diversity in gender, diversity in all sorts of things. If all your teams are made up out of men between the ages of 25 and 40, you do not have a lot of different experiences feeding into what's going on. So diverse teams perform better, and this has been shown repeatedly, and that is a bottom line thing. There are really major studies by management consultants showing that. So hopefully that's persuaded you that the gender differences are small, if at all, and actually we need to worry about the fact that there's this big gap. So what I've been doing is looking at the literature and also talking to lots of young women in tech. I run one of the UK's main conferences for undergraduate students who identify as women, and I've been speaking to people about what got them into computing in the first place and what inspired them to think about this as a career. And there were three kind of themes that come out of this, right? The first theme is the idea that at some point these people have had someone say to them, you can do this, and they've actually absorbed that, and it's become part of who they are. Self-confidence is something that, it's one of my complicated slides, it's one of those things that's kind of hard to develop and easy to knock. So it's very easy for people to get the message that something isn't for them, but getting the message that something is for them and that they can do it is really important. So if you're talking to girls about careers, about tech, just saying that computing is something they can do is a really important step to take, and it can help them understand the possibilities that are out there. The next thing that comes up repeatedly is relevance. So by relevance, we mean computing is relevant to pretty much everything. Everything you do at the moment has a computer in it, almost certainly. And with computing skills, you can go into all sorts of other areas. So for example, it's not just spreadsheets. There's a sense in which this particular point is about computing's image problem. I mean, I love a spreadsheet, but actually there's a lot more to computing than number crunching. And the things that you can do with computing, you can go into environmental science and do climate modeling, you can build computational art, you can make robots, you can go to healthcare, if you're interested in helping people, then there's obviously computing help desk roles and service roles. You could go into, but just generally problem solving, and problem solving with computers is problem solving for people. So people skills are really important in computing, and I think that's another thing that we don't emphasize enough. The last point I want to make when I'm talking with my brief relevance, computing could do everything, is computing can also make you reasonably large-sized buckets of money. If you're interested in making money, there are very well-paid jobs in tech, and there are vacancies in these very well-paid jobs. So it can be relevant to people thinking about their future careers in loads of different ways. And the final thing that comes up when you talk to people about computing and what kind of encouraged them to get into computing was not just people saying, you could do anything with computing, computing's relevant for everything, you can be successful in computing, you can do it, you can have that self-confidence to do it. The other thing that people need is they need to feel a sense of belonging. So they need to feel like computing is for them. It's not just that they can do it, it's not that they can do everything about it, it's that they belong there. And that's something that's actually harder to do, I think. Talking to kids in a robot club that I volunteer at, we've been in a situation where me and 3 or 4 women volunteers have been standing there, and one of the guys has said, well, computing's not for girls. And the 3 or 4 of us have looked at each other and gone, hang on, what's going on here? Everybody helping at this table is a woman, but people are still saying it's not for girls. And how you do engender a sense of belonging is a difficult question. You might do it perhaps through classroom posters or generic things like there's computer engineer Barbie to show that girls and careers, and maybe we need more role models. So maybe we need more role models like Margaret Hamilton, shown here in Lego, who was one of the early programmers, or Katherine Johnson, another NASA programmer now immortalized as a Barbie, Or maybe we need to be wearing, you know, Ada Lovelace hoodies everywhere we go. But showing that there are women in tech and having these ideas that let young women understand that there are role models out there and there are people that are like them doing this is, I think, really important. So that's the kind of 3 things that I want people to take away from this, is the 3 things that we want girls to get with their thoughts about computing. And those are, we want them to have a sense of belonging. We want them to feel like computing is for them. We want them to understand relevance. We want them to think computing is relevant to any career they want to go into. And finally, we want them to have the self-confidence or the self-efficacy to believe that they can do it.